the same conspiracy he'd been investigating. But instead of going public quietly, Magnus chose to confront Hikaru live on stream in front of 200 viewers. "Chat," he said, his voice steady. "Your favorite streamer has been working for a criminal network for years." The chat exploded, and Hikaru only smiled. "Magnus, you have no idea how deep this goes." When Magnus burst into Hikaru's streaming room with documents in hand, it wasn't a stunt. It was the moment the world realized that every laugh, every friendship, every move had been part of a lie. And as Hikaru finally spoke, he revealed something Magnus wasn't ready to hear. The network's plan to eliminate him was already in motion. Magnus stared at his phone screen, reading the anonymous message for the third time. After everything he had discovered about Dr. Chen's technology and Kasparov's 40-year documentation, he had learned to take such tips seriously. The message was simple but pointed. Check Hikaru's revenue sources. Follow the money. You'll find answers you don't want to know. Magnus had always trusted Hikaru. They had grown up in the chess world together, competed against each other countless times, and maintained what Magnus believed was a genuine friendship despite their rivalry. Hikaru's success as a Twitch streamer had made him one of the most recognizable faces in chess, bringing the game to millions of young people who might never have discovered it otherwise. But now, with suspicion planted in his mind, Magnus began to look at their relationship differently. Using the investigation skills he had developed over the past months, Magnus began tracing Hikaru's financial history. What started as a simple background check quickly became something much more disturbing. Hikaru's streaming revenue was actually just the tip of the iceberg. Hidden beneath layers of corporate structures and cryptocurrency transactions was a network of payments that dwarfed anything Hikaru could have earned from streaming alone. Magnus discovered that Hikaru was receiving regular payments from a shell company called Digital Entertainment Solutions, which was itself funded by Strategic Communications International. When Magnus traced these companies further, he found connections to the same network of organizations that had been funding the cognitive enhancement technology conspiracy. The revelation hit Magnus like a physical blow. Hikaru wasn't just a successful streamer who happened to be Magnus's friend, he was a paid asset of the technology network, positioned to monitor and influence the chess community from within. Every conversation they had shared, every piece of information Magnus had confided in him, had potentially been reported back to the conspiracy. Magnus spent hours diving deeper into Hikaru's financial records. The payments had been ongoing for over 3 years, with amounts increasing significantly whenever Magnus made major moves in his investigation. There were bonus payments that corresponded exactly to key moments. The day after he first met with Dr. Chen, the week he exposed Ding Liren's cheating scandal, and immediately after his meeting with Kasparov in Vienna. But the financial evidence was only part of the picture. Magnus began analyzing his recent interactions with Hikaru through this new lens, and a pattern emerged that made his blood run cold. Hikaru had always been remarkably well informed about Magnus's activities, often asking casual questions about his travel plans, meetings, and thoughts about various chess players. Magnus had attributed this to natural curiosity between friends, but now he realized these had been intelligence-gathering sessions disguised as friendly conversation. Magnus remembered a particularly disturbing conversation from 2 weeks earlier, when Hikaru had asked detailed questions about Dr. Chen's technology demonstrations. Magnus had shared information about the signal detection device and the warehouse laboratory, thinking he was confiding in a trusted friend. Now he understood that Hikaru had been pumping him for information that could be used to compromise Dr. Chen's safety. The betrayal was personal, but it was also strategic. Magnus realized that having Hikaru as an asset had given the technology network unprecedented access to the chess community. Through his streaming platform and social media presence, Hikaru could influence millions of chess fans, shape public opinion about various players and controversies, and monitor the chess world for potential threats to the conspiracy. Magnus decided that a private confrontation would be pointless. Hikaru was a skilled manipulator who had been deceiving him for years. Instead, Magnus chose a different approach. He would expose Hikaru publicly, using the very platform that had made Hikaru famous to reveal his true nature to the world. Magnus waited until Hikaru was in the middle of a popular evening stream. With over 200 viewers watching live, he had prepared carefully, gathering all the financial evidence and organizing it in a way that would be impossible to dismiss. More importantly, he had coordinated with several trusted allies to ensure that the evidence would be preserved even if the stream was cut short. At exactly 9:47 p.m., Magnus appeared in Hikaru's streaming room. The chat immediately erupted with excitement. Viewers often enjoyed surprise appearances by other chess personalities. But Magnus's expression was grim, and he was carrying a thick folder of documents. "Chat," Magnus said, his voice steady but filled with barely controlled anger. "Your favorite streamer has been working for a criminal network for years." The live chat exploded with confusion, disbelief, and demands for explanation. Some viewers thought it was an elaborate joke, but the tension in the room was palpable. Hikaru's initial reaction was to laugh and try to play off the accusation as a prank. "Magnus, what are you talking about? Come on. Man, don't be weird in front of my viewers." But his smile looked forced, and Magnus could see genuine fear in his eyes. "I'm talking about this," Magnus said, pulling out bank statements and spreading them across Hikaru's desk, directly in front of the camera so viewers could see them. Digital Entertainment Solutions, Strategic Communications International, 3 years of payments totaling over $2 million, all traced back to the same technology network that's been manipulating chess tournaments worldwide. The chat was moving so fast it was unreadable, with viewers spamming question marks and arguing among themselves about whether what they were seeing was real. But Hikaru's demeanor had completely changed. The playful streamer persona had vanished, replaced by something much colder. "Magnus," Hikaru said, his voice now devoid of its usual energy, "you have no idea how deep this goes." He leaned back in his chair and looked directly into the camera. "Chat? What you're witnessing right now is exactly what my employers have been preparing for. Magnus thinks he's exposing a conspiracy, but he's actually walking into the final trap." Magnus felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't the reaction he had expected. Hikaru wasn't denying the allegations. He was confirming them with a confidence that suggested he had been planning for this moment. "You think Dr. Chen was a whistleblower?" Hikaru continued, his smile now genuinely cold. "You think Kasparov's 40-year documentation was authentic? Magnus, every person you've trusted, every piece of evidence you've gathered, every step of your investigation has been carefully orchestrated. You've been playing a game where we controlled every move." The stream chat was in chaos, with viewers demanding to know if this was real or scripted. Magnus realized that regardless of how this confrontation ended, it was being witnessed by hundreds of thousands of people in real time. "That's impossible," Magnus said, but doubt was creeping into his mind. "I have independent verification of everything: the financial records, the technology demonstrations, the historical documents." Hikaru laughed genuinely for the first time in years. "Independent verification from whom?" "Dr. Chen, who approached you at exactly the right moment with exactly the right evidence. Kasparov, who contacted you with exactly the information you needed. Magnus, you're not investigating a conspiracy, you're the subject of one." Magnus felt the ground shifting beneath him as Hikaru continued. "The technology network you think you're fighting has been studying you for years. They know your psychology, your motivations, your weaknesses. They knew that if they presented you with evidence of corruption in the right way, you would feel compelled to investigate. The implications were staggering. If Hikaru was telling the truth, then everything Magnus thought he had discovered was a carefully constructed deception. But Magnus forced himself to focus on what he could verify immediately. "Explain the payments. Hikaru, explain why you've been taking money from the technology network if you're not working for them." Hikaru's expression became more serious. "The payments are real, Magnus. I have been working for them, but not in the way you think. I was recruited 3 years ago, shortly after you started asking questions about irregularities in tournament results. My job wasn't to spy on you, it was to protect you." This revelation hit Magnus like a physical blow. "Protect me from what? From being killed?" Hikaru replied matter-of-factly. "Magnus, you stumbled into something much bigger and more dangerous than chess corruption. The technology network you've been investigating is connected to intelligence agencies, military research programs, and political manipulation operations that span multiple countries. When you started getting close to the truth, certain elements within the network wanted you eliminated." Hikaru explained that his role had been to monitor Magnus's investigation and provide early warning when Magnus was getting too close to information that would trigger violent retaliation. The streaming career, the public persona, the friendship, all of it had been designed to keep Magnus under protective surveillance without him knowing it. But things have changed. Hikaru continued urgently. The protective faction within the network has lost influence. The people who want you dead are now in control, and my ability to shield you is ending. That's why I'm telling you this now, in front of all these witnesses." Magnus struggled to process this information. If Hikaru was telling the truth, then his entire understanding of the past 3 years was wrong. But the evidence of betrayal was still there. "How do I know you're telling the truth now?" Magnus asked. Hikaru reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a device that looked similar to Dr. Chen's signal detector, but more advanced, because I'm about to show you something that will prove everything I'm saying. This device doesn't just detect cognitive enhancement signals, it can trace them to their source. And when I activate it, you're going to see that the strongest signal in this room is coming from you. Magnus felt his heart stop. "What are you talking about?" "Magnus, you've been wearing a cognitive enhancement device for the past 6 months without knowing it. The signal detector Dr. Chen gave you? It's been subtly influencing your thought processes, making you more susceptible to suggestion, more likely to believe the evidence you were being shown." Hikaru activated the device, and its screen immediately lit up with signal patterns. The strongest signal was indeed coming from Magnus, specifically from the area around his left temple where he had been wearing Dr. Chen's supposedly protective earpiece. The real conspiracy, Hikaru continued, wasn't about cheating in chess tournaments. It was about testing advanced mind control technology on a high-profile subject, you. Dr. Chen wasn't trying to expose the technology network. She was one of its lead researchers. Your entire investigation has been a controlled experiment in cognitive manipulation. Magnus reached up and touched the earpiece he had been wearing since his meeting with Dr. Chen. He had thought it was a simple communication device. Now he realized it had been slowly reprogramming his thoughts, making him more paranoid, more suspicious. "But the evidence," Magnus protested weakly. "All real," Hikaru confirmed, "but carefully selected and presented to lead you to specific conclusions. There is corruption in chess, there are people using technology to cheat, and there are powerful interests trying to manipulate the sport. But the network you think you're fighting is actually trying to stop those things." Magnus felt like his entire world was collapsing. Everything he had believed about his investigation, his allies, and his enemies was being turned upside down. "Hikaru, if what you're saying is true, then why are you telling me this now?" Hikaru's expression became grim. "Because as of tonight, the experiment is over. Dr. Chen's research team has gathered all the data they need about cognitive manipulation techniques. You're no longer useful to them as a test subject, which means you're now a liability." The elimination order came through 3 hours ago. Magnus felt a chill as he realized the full scope of his situation. He had been manipulated, studied, and used as a research subject for months, and now that the research was complete, he was going to be eliminated. "There's more," Hikaru continued. "The cognitive enhancement technology isn't just being tested on chess players anymore. It's being deployed in political contexts, government officials, military commanders, business leaders, all being subtly influenced by technology they don't know they're wearing." Magnus realized that the conspiracy was far bigger than he had ever imagined. Chess had been just the testing ground for technology that was now being used to manipulate decision-makers at the highest levels of society. "Who's behind it?" Magnus asked. "That's the terrifying part," Hikaru replied. "I don't think anyone is fully in control anymore. The technology has become so sophisticated that it's operating semi-autonomously, making decisions about who to influence and how." Magnus looked around Hikaru's streaming room, suddenly aware that every surface might be monitored. The chat was still moving frantically, with viewers trying to understand whether what they were witnessing was real. "What happens now?" Magnus asked. "Now we run," Hikaru said, standing up and moving away from his computer. "I've been preparing for this moment for months. I have a safe house, transportation, and enough evidence to prove everything we've discussed. But Magnus, we have to leave immediately." Magnus realized he was facing a choice that would define the rest of his life. He could trust Hikaru, despite years of deception, or he could try to navigate this conspiracy alone. "There's something else you need to know," Hikaru said, glancing nervously at the door. "The technology network isn't just operating in chess and politics. They've been testing their cognitive manipulation technology on other chess players too, and one of those players is about to become the most powerful person in the country." Magnus felt his blood run cold. "What do you mean?" "The government official who's been publicly supporting chess education initiatives, who's been meeting with chess players and tournament organizers, They've been wearing cognitive enhancement technology for over a year. Their policy decisions, their public statements, their political positions, all being influenced by the same network that's been manipulating you. Magnus realized that the conspiracy extended into the highest levels of government. If a major political figure was being controlled by cognitive enhancement technology, the network had the power to influence legislation, military decisions, and international relations. "We have to expose this," Magnus said. "We can't expose it if we're dead," Hikaru replied urgently. "Right now, staying alive is our priority. The extraction team I've arranged will be here in 10 minutes. Magnus looked one last time at the streaming chat, which was still exploding with confusion. Hundreds of thousands of people had witnessed this conversation, but he suspected that by tomorrow, the stream would be deleted, and anyone who tried to discuss what they had seen would be dismissed as conspiracy theorists. The viewers heard everything. They heard a conversation between two chess players that could easily be dismissed as performance art, Hikaru replied. Without additional evidence, no one will believe that any of this was real. As they prepared to leave, Hikaru handed Magnus a small device. "This will block the signal from the earpiece Dr. Chen gave you. Your thoughts should clear up within a few hours, and you'll be able to think more independently." Magnus activated the device and immediately felt a strange sensation, as if a fog was beginning to lift from his mind. For the first time in months, his thoughts felt completely his own. "One more thing," Hikaru said as they reached the door. "The political figure I mentioned, they're not just any government official. They're someone with direct access to national security information and the power to influence international chess regulations. If the technology network gains complete control over them, they'll be able to manipulate chess on a global scale." Magnus realized that their escape was just the beginning of a much larger fight. The technology network wasn't just threatening individual chess players, it was threatening the integrity of democratic institutions. As they left the building and stepped into the night, Magnus couldn't shake the feeling that they were already being watched. The cognitive enhancement conspiracy had revealed itself to be far more sophisticated than anyone had imagined. And now, as Magnus and Hikaru began their desperate flight, the real war for human cognitive freedom was about to begin. The stream had ended abruptly, leaving hundreds of thousands of viewers with more questions than answers. But somewhere in the Norwegian government, a high-ranking official was receiving reports about the night's events and making decisions that would determine whether Magnus Carlsen lived to see another day. The technology network had been exposed, but their most powerful assets were still in place, still operating, and still working to ensure that the truth would never see the light of day. But Magnus had one advantage the network hadn't anticipated. As the cognitive enhancement device's influence began to fade, he started remembering details from the past months that had been suppressed or altered by the technology. Conversations that had seemed normal at the time now revealed themselves as carefully orchestrated manipulations. Evidence that had appeared convincing was now obviously fabricated or distorted. Most importantly, Magnus began to remember people and conversations that the device had made him forget entirely. There were allies he had made during his investigation who had been completely erased from his memory, potential sources of help that the technology had prevented him from recognizing. As his natural cognitive abilities returned, Magnus realized that he might not be as alone in this fight as he had been led to believe. The war for human cognitive freedom was indeed about to begin, but Magnus was no longer the confused and manipulated test subject he had been for the past 6 months. He was becoming himself again, the strategic genius who had dominated chess for years, now applying that same analytical power to the most dangerous game of his life.